Thank you very much. My name again is Peter Semmelhack, and I did in fact write this book. I've never written a book before. It was really hard. I don't recommend it unless you really know what you're talking about. In fact, I don't even know what I'm talking about. But the book came out a couple weeks ago. In fact, we're going to have some out there if you want to check it out. But what it really is it's a compendium of experiences that I've had over the past 7 years running a company called Bug Labs. Bug Labs is an open source hardware company that's done a lot of work in the Internet of Things. In fact, everything we've done has been in that space. You can call it what you want. It used to be called M2M, connected devices, Internet of Things. There are companies out there like Cisco that call it the Internet of Everything, IBM, Smarter Planet, Industrial Internet. But the fact of the matter is it's not one thing. It's a gigantic conglomeration of all kinds of things. And if you talk to anybody in the space, they'll all have stories as to what's worked and what hasn't worked. And so what I've done in the book is I've tried to come up with a vernacular for what the Internet of Things is. And I think it boils down to a couple of important pieces, especially as it pertains to anybody in here who's an entrepreneur or runs product development for an OEM, is that if you are in the business of making a thing today, and I don't care what the thing is, and I have an example which is kind of funny, but it could be a car, it could be an air conditioner, it could be literally anything that's physical. What's starting to happen is you're recognizing that it's becoming harder to compete because hardware is hard, the margins tend to be sort of low, the growth is sporadic, and so you're trying to find new ways to affect top-line growth. And so one of the things that has been coming out is that the recognition is that services are a way you can now become more competitive. So Business Week was saying that connected devices. Well, so what? So you've connected your thing to the network. Now what? You have to have some service that people want. My favorite one is Jeff Bezos at a press conference in last September, when he was announcing the new Fire Kindle. Stood up there and he said he had a big presentation of the sort of Ghostbusters graphic, which had the word gadgets and there was a big cross through it. And said, people don't want gadgets. No one wants gadgets. People want services. And they want services that get better over time. And of course he's talking about the Kindle. And in fact, they don't even make money selling the Kindle. They're happy to sell it at cost. And the concept is that they will sell this to you as sort of a window into additional services that they will continue to offer over time. And it's a wonderful model. I'm sure you guys have all had experiences with Kindle, iPads, and so on, where they really are nothing but conduits for additional things, applications, services, and so on. And so if you're making something today, there's this pressure to find new ways to add services. So you call it the Internet of Things, but in lots of ways it's sort of the Internet of services for things, because the things themselves are meaningless unless you can connect them in interesting ways. So the example I'm using today is literally an example that we worked on a couple weeks ago. And I bring this up because it's a great example of the things that are happening now. So one of the country's largest manufacturers of office furniture comes to us and says, look, we make office furniture, and we've heard a lot about the Internet of Things, and so what exactly could we use to help us with this? And we're like, I have no idea. I really have no idea. Because I don't know anything about office furniture. But what we could try to do is we could try to connect this thing to the Internet and see what happens. Right? And so, the same problem. And so we took one of these little jobs here. Now, if you're interested, I can show it to you later. But there's a device that's made by a company called RTX. It's a Danish company. It's a little 2 AAA batteries, a Wi-Fi chip, and an accelerometer. That's all this thing is, all it is. And we 3D printed this little housing, over the course of a couple hours. We jammed this thing in there, and there's a little cutout in this that allows you to connect it to the back of the chair, and we put it on 5 or 6 chairs, and we said, okay, now what? And there's a product we make called Swarm that allows you to visualize the data. So we put on this chair, and voila, you see a graph that shows the XYZ acceleration of the chair. And we're like, okay, now what? And there's 3 designers, and they're looking at this, and there's, within a half an hour, they came up with 10 applications that they thought they could run on this chair. And everyone's laughing, and like, but this is exactly the problem people face. And so, believe it or not, there's this concept called bounce. where if you sit in your chair and you bounce the chair, you actually are burning calories. And so you could actually, over the course of a week, you could say, you know what? You've burned 1,000 calories. You know? So that's one. The other one is, I don't know how many of you guys have a Jawbone, the up bracelet? Anybody? Well, so the bracelet has a setting that if 90 minutes, if you were just sitting comatose, it'll vibrate, and it'll get you to say, hey, you know what? You should get up. It's good for your circulation. You shouldn't just sit around like a lug. And so they said, you know, we could do the same thing. We could recognize if the chair's moved at all, which means you're just sitting there in your cubicle doing nothing, playing Minecraft, and you should get out of your chair and do something, right? So they came up with ideas that had to do with fitness and circulation and stuff. But then they were thinking, you know, we can now use the chair to monitor what conference rooms are being used. Are they in use? And as we started having these discussions, it turns out that this company was trying to get into the productivity business. Right? They're trying to sell productivity services. This is what they make physically, but what they're really trying to sell is this idea that if you sit in our chairs, your workers will be more productive. And so these discussions are starting to happen, and the technologies now exist where literally you can say, you want to try it? Let's try it. And within a day, you can be trying it. And you can get designers and say, you know, that's cool. Now, I have no idea what's going to happen if they're either going to do it, but the thinking now is that they have a chair, which today maybe is $900, but now if they can successfully put this together, maybe they sell the chair, you know, version 1.1, which is maybe the same price, maybe a little bit more, but now they can sell applications against it, right? And so now they end up in a situation where they have a continuing dialogue with their customer, the value accrues, same things happen. You have an API that third-party developers can now write. So it's an amazing time where old school OEM providers are starting to think, how do I connect my stuff? Entrepreneurs are thinking the same thing. Now, I don't have a lot of time, but I'll leave you with one thought, which I think is important. If you are a designer of anything today, one of the things that becomes very important is that you don't have just one customer anymore. Because historically, the designers of chairs had customers who were buying chairs to sit in them. What a surprise. Now what's happening, though, is if you have an online device, now you have to start thinking about developers. You have to start thinking, oh, if I'm going to put this thing online, and I'm going to give it an API, what do I want developers to come and use it for? What do I do to entice developers to this thing that I'm putting on the network? And it's a completely different set of questions. And so we find ourselves educating folks on this new sort of division because, again, I don't care what it is. It's a car, air conditioner, chair. If you're going to start doing this, you have to start thinking about this stuff. So it's a big question. And it's a fascinating time to start thinking about it. We do a lot of work with Ford. And Ford has Sync, but we have been working on a project called OpenXC, which for the past year and a half, you can openxcplatform.com. And it's basically a way to put Ford vehicles, you know, open them up entirely. And so they're now concerned with this idea, you know, because Sync is totally closed, for the most part totally closed. If you open up cars and allow developers to come and use them, what does that mean, right? And how do you attract a big collection of developers? And so this is a good example of the kinds of organizations that are starting to struggle with this. I don't have time for a demo. If anyone's interested in seeing something I can show you later, thank you very much.